Welcome to Trail Manners, the podcast so dedicated to mountain trails and running that they broadcast out of a 78 Volkswagen bus in the mountains. Who does that? Eric and Joel are your hosts and will bring you the trail life as you may have not heard it before. You hear about everything from gear reviews, nutrition to keep you upright and moving forward, and they'll even bring guests into the bus for conversations that you won't hear anywhere else. It's time for some running adventures on a higher elevation. The old 78 Volkswagen bus is fired up and headed to the mountains. Here are your hosts for Trail Manners, proudly representing the 801 with their passion and love for the trails. Eric Manning and Joel Hatch.
Hello and welcome to the Trail Manners Podcast, episode number 40. Today we're going to be talking with Canice Harte of Park City Run Company. So if this is your first time listening, then thanks for coming. The Trail Manners Podcast is produced every week for your enjoyment, and show notes are found at trailmanners.com. Come back often, and please feel free to add the podcast to your favorite RSS feed or iTunes. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Trail Manners. All links are in the show notes. Now let's get after it. All right, welcome back to the Trail Manners Podcast, episode 40. That's groundbreaking at some level.
Right.
And we are back to, again, it's our home away from home.
It is.
I checked the voicemails and I didn't get any mail yet, but we're back at Park City Running Company, one of our favorite spots.
I think so.
We've already done the loop, went through the store, checked everything out,
Checked
see
all
if
the
anything
gear.
new's come in after 2 weeks.
Yep.
Because that's when we were here last. So we're here today. We're going to do a fun show. First up, we've got Canice. He's been on our show before. He was with us on episode number 20.
Wow.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's been a little while.
It has been a little while. And before we had you on, you were getting ready for a big year, and now all those kind of races are done.
Yeah.
So now we can revisit and see where we're at and how they went.
And now
what's
it's time
next?
to get my head ready for what's next. So
Yeah, what's next?
So, I mean, we can start off. We had you back in March, around the 17th, and you still had coming up, you still had the Gorge race, right?
Yep.
And you had Miwok.
Yep.
And then the little race, the Western States, that was still on the docket.
Little startup race.
Little
yeah.
startup
Little
race.
Startup.
It's a new one.
Crowdfunded it, didn't they?
Crowdfunded, yeah, there you go. So, I mean, walk us through, since we had you on the show last. I mean, the store's doing great, it looks like. I mean, we love it here. So, we've been visiting a few times now.
Yep.
But as far as the races go, kind of building up, because obviously Western's an A race. That's one everybody wants to get to. Plus, if you haven't heard, I recommend you listen to episode 20 because there's a story behind Western States for Canice.
Right.
You know, it was kind of like a coming back, and I don't know the best word for it, but something you'd had on your docket for quite a while.
Yeah, it's actually, you easily say it's what got me into ultra running at some level. I mean, interesting enough is, so the story essentially goes back to when I was commuting to work on a motorcycle and a steel pipe came off a truck in front of me and went through my knee at about 55 miles per hour. Could have been a little faster, but I mean, it's about as ugly as you might imagine that would be. And I had to sign a release to have my leg amputated and, did not. And the doctor saved it, and 5 surgeries, I think, now later, and, still out running. But I had said at one point to the doctor, I had said to him that, I really wanted to run Western States. And it was this 100-mile race, and he laughed out loud. And, it was one of those things where it didn't sit very well with me. He wasn't trying to be, mean about it. I think it was more like tough love, but it was like, you're not going to run 10 miles, let alone run 100 miles is what he said. And so to be able to run 100 miles, to be able to do that, or in my case, to get to Western States was a really big deal. But a lot happened between now and then. By chance, a friend of mine had run Wasatch, and I paced her, and that was actually my kind of intro really into running ultras myself and being around it and exposed. And so, yes, it was a long road coming. So what I did, I hurt my knee in 2002.
Wow. Okay.
So this was all this time to here we are now in 2016. And as everybody, or most people know, getting into Western States just with the lottery can be like years, many years.
Right,
And so I got in this year, and then, it's one of those things. Like once you're in, and after having set that as a goal, you're like, well, I've got to respect this thing and honor it,
Right.
And, do it right. So, so that was a part of what my whole race schedule was set up around this year, was leading up to that race.
So you went to Gorge first. Did you do the 100K there?
Yeah, so the basic plan was, and what I did is, through the winter, was to, a good friend of mine, Dominic Layfield, so Dom and I run together a fair amount, and basically what we planned on doing was trying to get me up to like running 6 days a week, an hour a day to 2 hours a day. And I think the plan was to try to shoot for 7 days a week, assuming you're going to miss a day or something like that. And there were times when I was really hitting that, like when I was actually getting that. And then there were other times with work and with having a store that's new and getting it up and running, and kids and family. And, you miss a lot of those days. So like probably most people out there, life sometimes gets in the way of your training. But, I try to stay pretty true to it. I think I think probably the fair assessment is I feel like I was like 40% trained up the way I wanted to be trained. Maybe a little bit more. I definitely had some legs under me this time, but I feel like I could have done so much more training, probably. Maybe it was a little better than that. But part of that plan was to hit the Gorge 100K April 2nd, and then that would force me to run through the winter to really make sure I was ready for it.
Right.
And then I ran, our local fun bow show marathon, which is kind of a bootleg marathon that happens.
Never heard of it.
Never heard of it. It doesn't. If it does exist, it happens the same day as the Salt Lake Marathon, but on trails. But I used it as a training run, so I went depleted on that. So I went 0 calories and 0 water for that whole marathon, just to like.
So how'd that go?
I was hungry and thirsty at points, but it actually went really well. Yeah. I was really pleased with the way that kind of came through. And then 2 weeks later was the Miwok 100K. Okay. So basically there was a 100K April 2nd, a 100K May 7th. Mm-hmm. And then at the end of May on Memorial Day, which this is a super cool weekend that we all need to get everybody out to do, is the Western States Training Camp.
That looks like fun.
That does look
it's
fun.
A ton of fun. It's over 400 people show up to that thing, and they have buses hauling you around, and there's food, and there's some aid stations, but essentially anybody can sign up for it. It's 3 days of running. You run 70 miles of the course. And really the thing to do would be like get a big group together, get a house, swimming pool kind of thing, and then just like hang out, because it's an incredible like fun and thing to do. But so that was 70 miles. So it kind of went, Gorge, the bow show, Miwok, training camp, and then into Western States.
So do you think the training camp gave you a pretty good taste of what was to come?
I think the training camp was great. I think it did exactly that. It's I do think it's one of these things where Western States, to me, and I know this is probably wrong, but because the times are so fast that people are running it,
right?
And I think about the trails we run in the Wasatch, I thought to myself, oh, well, this is easy. This must be an easy course.
Right.
And a friend of mine, Leslie Hallett, and I, that were running together out there, we both were saying the same thing. We're like, well, actually, this course isn't easy. It's like you get out there on the training camp and you get to see that.
Right.
And you're like, oh, wait a minute. Actually, there's, one, you learn that what is easy is that there's, seemingly easy, right? There's a lot of descending, on that course. Yeah. I think it's roughly 18,000 feet of gain and 23,000 feet of loss through the course. And the way that course lines up, you don't run the first 30 miles, you run the last 70 miles in training camp. So I didn't get to see the first 30 until the race. But the first 30 miles is sort of traditional mountain running like we have here.
Right.
And then what you're doing is you pick up things like some fire roads, you'll pick up single track trails, you'll have rocky descents for that balance of that 70, but predominantly you're starting to move downhill as you do that. But there's some really big climbs that happen right in the heat of the day on the race. And like when I ran the race this year, I think the temperature they said was 104 througrough the day.
Now, how did you do with that?
I felt like I was running from ice station to ice station.
Were you really?
Yeah, so Western States is, not, just jumping ahead a little bit, I guess, into Western itself, but like, one of the amazing stats, there's 355 runners in it. They had 2,100 volunteers.
So what happens when you come into an aid station? Do you have somebody that's almost dedicated to you then?
Yeah, you really do. It's a little bit like NASCAR, and it's almost a bit overwhelming because, I think if you're an elite runner and you're really used to moving through aid stations very fast and efficiently, it probably feels just normal and great, and they just kind of cruise with it. I've always been one of those runners where, an aid station could represent a break or, like, which is good and bad. It's good to move through there, but, you roll up into an aid station at Western and, I've got some sun sleeves on my arms, right? So, like, you run up there, all of a sudden they've got ice scoops of ice going down your sun sleeves. They take your bandana off. They're filling it with ice around your neck. Mm-hmm. They're getting you just whatever you want. You might have 2 or 3 people just filling your bladders, filling stuff for you, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, see ya, you're out. And
you're like, wait a minute, where's the chair?
yeah. Like, wait, I thought in ultra running we always sat in chairs. Like, what's going on? Where's my pizza?
Yep.
But this training camp, when you get out there, you really get to sort of see the course and get a sense of it. And so one of the things that's really cool about this training camp is, so imagine like you're going to go up and the first day you run 30 miles. You go from Robinson Flat, which is a really big aid station in the race, and you're going to go to Forest Hill School, I think is an elementary school, but that's a 30-mile leg, and it's really some iconic parts of the trail. But all of a sudden, like, these buses pull up, and like 400 of you get out. It feels like you're in a race. Like, you almost kind of feel like ready, set, go. You want to take off. But instead, you're kind of milling about. You're chatting with people. The pros are there. So you get all the elites. You get all the like people that are going to run it their first time. You have tons of people that are never going to run it probably, or not even entered in the lottery. And then you kind of think to yourself, like, oh, we should start running. Oh, we should do this.
Great big fun run.
Yeah. And then you start running, and you will find yourself kind of like the race thing starts to kick in. You're like, oh, there's people in front of me. I got to pass. I got to get out in front of them.
Does that happen?
It does, because all of a sudden you start getting caught up, and then you're like, oh, wait, chill out.
Yeah.
Whoa, wait, this is just a fun run, And then I think it was cool, too, because like when you're going to go out and do a race, you're not stopping. Well, I mean, some people can, but, we're not stopping and taking photos and things along a race. But here in the training camp now, you can take photos. You can get everybody together. And I don't know, if you see a sign, this is Western States Trail, and you want to take a photo with it, no penalty. Go for it.
Right.
And they have some aid stations out there, so you're running along. You'll get some aid. It's not as much as during the race, but during the race, they have an insane amount of aid stations.
Right.
And then, they finish with food at the end of the day, and then everybody will get together, and there's like 4 or 5 of us holed up in one Motel 6 room. So, we'd pile out to the local brewery and go get some food and kind of get ready for the next day. And yes, the training camp is cool. In fact, I came back and I reached out to Phil Lowry, with Wasatch one night. I'm like, Phil, we got to get a training camp going for Wasatch.
That would be fun.
It'd be super cool. Like, shuttle people around, get them so they can, check the course out.
Yep.
But it's about hanging out with a bunch of other runners and just really, I don't know, sort of embracing the course and the run and the environment and the just everybody around you. So, so I'm a huge fan of that training camp, and I didn't realize that it would be as cool as it was.
And that's something, like you mentioned earlier, that's something you don't have to be running the race. It could be for anybody that wants to be a part of it. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. And that was like a lot of the people you meet. Well, you'll meet people that are like, well, I've been in the lottery so many times, and I'm out here checking it out. People I was running with, had already run Western States, but this is a way to kind of come back to it and, run the course. You'll just meet people that are like, this is the weekend thing they do. Maybe they live in the area and they signed up for the camp, and it's a pretty nice deal. I think it was like $50 a day is what it works out to. You can sign up for 1, 2, or 3 of the days.
That's a good deal.
That's a really good deal.
Does that include transportation? Like
includes transportation, buses, aid stations,
That's
food afterwards.
No,
it really is. That's what I mean. Like, and it's the kind of thing where, so going back to the Gorge, 100K, one of the things that was very cool about that race was we got, I think it was like 12 of us from the area here in the Wasatch area to head out to that race. And that was that was great. I mean, it was so much fun because, like, it's a classic, like, you run into a few people, and maybe you know them, maybe you kind of know them from, Wasatch Mountain Wranglers Facebook. But all of a sudden you're like, hey, let's go to dinner. Let's all go out to get breakfast together or lunch or whatever it is. And in that course at the Gorge 100K happens to be an out and back. And so what's super cool is you get to see everybody, when you're doing that return leg. And so all of a sudden, like, you're traveled away to this race, but now you feel like you're amongst friends the entire time and you're seeing everybody. And that's a bit of what this Western States training camp is like. You get enough of people together, and it just makes you feel really excited about your own running community when you get back home to it.
Right.
So now kind of jumping ahead a little bit to Miwok. So you went out to that one as well, and
yeah.
The reason you went out to that is to prep for Western. Is that right? I mean, that's kind of why you did that race at the time.
Well, it's two-part because it is a lottery to get into Miwok.
Right.
So the Gorge, you can sign up, and you just get everybody to do it as quickly as possible. And luckily, I harangued everybody on Facebook, and a bunch of people seemed to like just
nice
give in.
Word.
And, yeah,
Harangued.
Yeah. Well, we got everyone kind of in on that one. Miwok is lottery, so you can't. I mean, you can sign up for it in hopes that it happens as part of your training. I certainly was thinking that, but that course is really beautiful. And I grew up in the Bay Area, so for me, it's a bit of going back home and seeing family and friends kind of thing. But it's a very different style of running. You're running on a lot of fire roads, very smooth trails. It's considered a harder course, but like where I was thinking Western was going to be an easy course, like Miwok's running trails are actually nicer than even at Western. But you're looking at the bay. You know, you're running along the ocean. You're head out to the Golden Gate Bridge. You can see the city. You're running around, and we got some. It's kind of mixed weather when I was there. In the beginning, it seemed good because it was completely overcast, and you could tell rain was coming. And then there was a good 20-mile section where it was just complete downpour and you know, getting cold, and that was a little bit harder. And I fell behind a little bit during that section, but. So Miwok is, I think, a race everybody should do if you can. I mean, you know, just have fun with it because it's such a beautiful course, and it's so different than anything we get to run around here because you're along the ocean and you know, in the hills.
And that's a fast course, right? I mean, the times for that are generally really fast for the distance.
Yeah, it's fast, and you're pulling a lot of the speedier people out of the San Francisco Bay Area, which there are quite a few, and you get that whole community that's there, and they have a really strong, you know, community as well. I mean, one of the things after the race, I was meeting up with some friends, you know, just to grab a bite, and there's a M&H Bread and Butter, which is in San Anselmo, is like their local hangout for the community. So I sat down, I met up with a person who's known in the running community, Topher Gaylord, who I've known for many years and is a friend, and he's actually the one who ran Western States the very first time in the mid-'90s that got me, put it on my radar and got me, and that's how it became that goal of mine. But so I was hooking up with Toph and his wife Kim, and we were just grabbing a bite to eat, and a buddy comes with me, and so we sit at the outside at a table of 4, and before you know it, I think we had like 15 or 16 people, you know, and like you got pros, and I think people, a name that people are starting to know now, EO, who she won Lake Sonoma, and she was out of Western. Magda Belay was there, like, you know, just names that some people might know, but mostly you're just getting locals, like just their local running community. And we kind of miss that. Like if there was one place you knew if you went to grab breakfast, you were going to run into like half the running community, you know, that would be pretty cool. So they have that. So I think when you're actually out at Miwok, there's a whole scene there that's worth checking out as well. Okay. And then there's a great store. I should put a plug in for San Francisco Running Company.
Oh, always.
And, you know, San Francisco Running Company, which, you know, we're always in communication with, and you know, we don't model after them or vice versa, but there's a lot of synergies between the two stores.
Right.
That's awesome. I mean, they do a lot of fun stuff, and the athletes that go in and out of there, and there's always people there.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, like, and it's that kind of classic. If you want to figure out where the core people are hanging out and what they're doing and what the scene is, you know, that's a great spot to do it. So Miwok is a totally cool race that should be on someone's radar regardless. But in my case, I got super lucky with the way Gorge and then Miwok, you know, lined up before the training camp and then Western.
So you've done those 3. You did the Gorge, Miwok, the training camp. After the training camp, before Western, how did you feel just heading into it? After seeing the course, getting some good training, did you feel like, okay, I'm ready as you could be for this? Or
yeah, I felt good. I think that after the training camp, having seen the course, one of the first things I did was I started reevaluating kind of like my race plan, or like, you know, I think one of the things I realized is that, you know, Western is a really runnable course, and that's why the times are fast. But you're still running 100 miles, and you're still pounding your legs, you know, in these mountain trails. So it certainly, I came away from that realizing, okay, this is not going to be easy. It's not a stroll in the park. There's plenty of technical running on this. The heat, you know, I was starting to get my head around that. I knew that was going to be a factor in it, so I started thinking through how to mitigate heat. And you know, one of the things I'd like to do is run like the elites with just a water bottle in my hand and, you know, not have a vest or, you know, anything on my back. But I realized I was going to have to run with a vest, and just the way I dealt with water. And so I started kind of thinking about that. I continued to run and just train and get some training runs in, but I did not get the feeling that I needed to redo some part of my training. Like, you know, I feel fairly good and comfortable and quick on downhills and, you know, technical descents and things. So I was mostly just worried about outrunning my legs at Western, like running too fast, too early. And so I really just wanted to lay in a plan where I was just going to take it easy, you know, before that. And, you know, at Western, I think there's, you know, a few goals for everybody, right? Like, generally speaking, I think one would say just finishing a race is the primary goal. I can honestly say that wasn't mine. I really was just all set on, I just wanted to go sub 24 at it. For me, that was like the thing that I really wanted to do. My secondary goal is I really wanted to run a 22-hour time on it. And then my third goal is, if everything had lined up right, and everything was checking well, I was going to try to go sub 20
Wow.
and, see if I could chip away at that. So here I am with, on one hand, realizing I need to like take it easy and not outrun my legs
Right.
and worry about the heat. And then I've got these kind of time goals. I figured because of my knee and that whole story and setting as a goal, if I just finished, even if it was 29 hours, 59 minutes, like I was going to be successful.
Yeah.
So I knew I'd be successful finishing, but my goals were actually faster
Right.
than, what success would be. So.
And you took a crew out with you to help you, right? You had some pacers and stuff that came from here, right?
Yeah,
Park
so
City.
we actually ended up with a pretty good Utah crew out there. There's a good Utah contingent out there. So I think there was 5 of us running it from Utah, but in particular, Leslie Hallett and myself from here, Tommy Barlow, who's running the Grand Slam. He's now run Western and Vermont. Brandon Wicks, who is running the Grand Slam as well, went out there. So we had 4 of us right there. And Suzanne Lewis, who you interviewed the same time I chatted with you last time, was running. So there was 5 of us, and there were 2 other Utah people who I didn't meet that are out of Salt Lake that are supposed to be pretty quick. And it's a shame that we didn't get to meet them. But so each of us all have our crews and stuff. But Leslie Hallett and myself and our teams, if you will, we all rented a house together. And we were like right over the start area in this house. This is a beautiful spot. Leslie found the place for us, and it was great. So Leslie had her husband, Jeremy, and her kids. I had my my team, which was going to be Pete Stoughton, but he ended up pacing Suzanne for it as well. So he kind of jumped over there to help her out. So I had Paul Sharwell and Dominic Layfield, so Dom and Paul with me. So my crew was those 2. And then the way Western States lines up, you're running through the canyon more or less. And for the crew to access the aid stations, it's good if you can split them in 2 because a couple of the aid stations are on one side of the canyon and the other aid stations are on the other side, and getting back and forth would be just really kind of a long thing. So my crew of Dom and Paul also aided Leslie like at the first aid station and stuff. We just made sure we had her stuff there. And so it really was like just a big pile of us from Utah out there. And then Western States is interesting in that there's the running of the race. There's the actual course and and doing that, but there's a whole scene like when building up to it when you get in there. Like I was saying, like one of the things that I find amazing is sort of this orbit, if you will, of Western, because like I had people, all kinds of people asking me like what my goal was, what my target times were for Western. No one ever asked me that for like Wasatch or something. Like people like were coming out of the woodworks to crew and support you, and you kind of realize that one, that's super cool, but you're all like, like, why is it now all of a sudden everybody wants to pace and crew and support? And it's part of Western. Like, it's part of, like, people, in a way, want their own experience. And I think they're being genuine. They want to help you. But, like, it was noticeably different, like, how many people were reaching out to me leading up to it. And then you get out there, and they have, like, days of things going on. Like, when you're there's different venues you can see. There's one of the things they did that was cool was the day before they had a race which was the first 7 miles of the course, but basically up to the top of Squaw Valley. And that was so much fun. And obviously, as a person running Western, you're not doing it, but all your crew and your pacers and everybody gets to run a race.
Neat.
So now you're out there, like, checking them out while they're going off to run. And so that's what happens. So Dom, Pete, and, Dom and Pete were, I think Paul wasn't in yet, but they went off and did this race. It was super fun. I thought that was cool. And they're talking about maybe even adding, like, a kids race or a family race or something.
That'd be fun.
So you realize that there's just a lot going on for everybody around, and it's in the village of Squaw, and so there's check-in procedures. And, I think another thing that Western does that was interesting is they provide a lot of social media content for you for free. In fact, I just did this adventure race a couple weeks ago, and they too provided a lot of social media content for free, which is very different than you get a typical race model. So the typical race model, right? The photographers are out there, they capture a couple photos of you, and then you can buy them, and then you have this price. What Western did, and this adventure race did, is they just paid the photographers, and then you can have the content for free. So when you check in at Western, the first thing you do is you get in this queue, you line up, and they do a survey. They're wondering, like, what kind of pack are you wearing? Are you wearing a pack or not pack? What kind of shirt are you wearing? Pants, shorts? Like, they just start, it's like they just start getting data. So I thought that was interesting. Like, our races could do that, like collect data so we can start getting some information. Then you go in and you get like a wristband put on you that has to stay on through the rest of the race. And all of a sudden you get a little card with your info on it, and you walk around kind of this maze, if you will, and pick up different things. But there's like headshots. Like all of a sudden you sit down in the chair, headshots, and then that photo is provided for you. Western at the finish, always provides a little 30-second video of you finishing. So
that's right.
here I was like running the race. I'm not even thinking about that stuff. And when I get finished, I find out that my wife had like been posting that. Like she'd been taking this like free social media content, and not because she was trying to promote or do something like in a promotional way, but rather just like, hey, Canice is doing this or that. And then all of a sudden that kind of got around. So they do a lot to create a lot of buzz in just the way the thing is set up. And then the funny part was, so when you finish going through and you get your swag bag and you kind of go through the tables and they start filling it up with all the stuff you're going to get, it dumps you off downstairs into a store. And you are, and it's like,
what are you gonna do there?
Yeah, so what are you gonna do here? Like, and you want to buy, and it works well because you want to buy your crew, shirts, or hey, here's all of our race shirts for being together, and bought my little girls, and they have like stuff for kids, and they have like name brand stuff. So it's like all
so
Patagonia's logoed up, Icebreaker's logoed up, Mount Hardware's logoed up, like just all of this stuff, and you're like, wow, this is amazing. Like I would never have this much race stuff, but there's some pretty cool things here,
Right.
And they must make a crazy amount of money because I probably spent like $200-300. Like
Right.
my wife goes, "Did you really spend $70 on this shirt for me?" I'm like, I didn't look. I was just.
It was cool.
It was cool, and it's not
In
the
the
like.
moment.
It's not like the money doesn't matter, but in the moment,
Yeah.
you are just buying up stuff for people, and so.
And you were probably on the low end of that
Oh,
buying scale, right?
yeah.
There's
Yeah, 'cause
people that walk out of there $500,
They're totally
just
worth
giddy.
it. Well, they had like things like down puffy coats and stuff. Like imagine getting logoed puffy coat, just
Yeah.
that
Couple
alone.
$100
Like, yeah,
right
that's
there.
right there. So yeah, that store is genius for those guys. But and meanwhile, like you're going to like race briefings and check-ins, so you're kind of tired before you even get to the race. In
Right.
fact, probably the thing that I've never had this happen before, but this was the best thing ever. So I'm starting to get a little overwhelmed before we even get to the start of the race, and I don't really want to go to the race to the start line tired and a bit knackered. But so we go back to the house to escape. I was staying in a downstairs room that had a deck, like with sliding glass doors. So I opened them up and just had this great breeze come in, and I was just trying to get some alone space, but I fell asleep. And I fell asleep at 4:30 in the afternoon.
Wow.
Uh-oh.
I woke up the next morning for the race. Like I slept from
Oh my
4:30
gosh.
in the afternoon all through the night. Like woke up chipper, like happy, like, hey guys, let's go run a race. And
Wish I could do that.
I probably
Night
would
before
have
a
freaked
race.
out.
oh, it was the
Wake
it's-
up, where am I?
Yeah, no.
What's going on?
One and only time. Like we'd eaten an early dinner and stuff, so we'd all had food and
Right.
everything was good. I was already prepped, all I had to do was kind of wake up. So I couldn't believe that. That was
That's
like
amazing.
I felt like I won the lottery right there.
Yeah.
But so lo and behold, you get over to the start line, and all of a sudden, like it's different than all the races around here too, because like on the start of that race, the crowd is probably 4 or 5 people deep.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if it's a quarter mile, but it's a very long ways up the trail. Like you're running through just lots of people,
Right.
lots and lots of people. So, obviously nothing like a UTMB or something over in Chamonix, but it might be as close as we get
Right.
to something like that here. And you can just tell. And the other thing that is different at that race, cameras every place.
Yeah.
And not just people with their phones, but like TV cameras from around the world, kind of thing. You've got people making movies. Like when you're at the race briefing, like there was one point it was hard to see the people up the front because there were so many cameras between all the participants and the people like giving the race briefing. And the race briefing was so packed that I had to step outside for a brief moment. There was as many people seemingly outside the room that couldn't get in that were there for the race briefing. So the whole thing about Western is it's just a lot of stuff going on, and the build up to it with people like asking you about it, you actually get to the point of the race, and then you realize at some point, oh, I actually got to run 100 miles now.
And all this stuff going on. It's like, wait, there's a race at the end of this.
Yeah, and you actually really, once the race gets going, it's almost like a calmer, happier place in a way, because now you
Right.
just get to the business of doing it. And certainly, the heat picks up in the day and you're out there for a ways. You go, okay, I'm running 100 miles now. Like, this is real. Like, you start to feel it. But then you just get to the business of running your race and, however that plays out for anybody. And the scene even afterwards when you're finished the race was amazing because like I came home and just the amount of people, like if I put a Facebook post up, I'd have a few hundred likes on it, like instantly seemingly. And I mean, I'd like to think I'm a popular person, but nowhere near that. You know, I was like,
we've been on our show twice.
Well, that's true. Yeah. So it's building, but people would like, you know, like just friends from around town that really don't know anything about ultra running, but maybe saw a post on Facebook or something. Like I was getting stopped in the grocery stores and congratulated, or people would come in the store for the better part of a week to check the buckle out because the buckle is seriously cool. But
where is the buckle?
Yeah, it's funny. It's not here actually. It's if you can tell,
like
we used
the
to have all
bus,
the buckles
right?
on the wall right there.
2 weeks ago.
So I'm just taking the. We're just going to redo how we display all the buckles.
Right.
And because the Western States buckle is handmade in Reno and it's all sterling silver, I didn't want that one falling off the wall, so we're gonna make a little shelf system. But so yeah, it needs to get
alarm system on that thing.
Yeah,
right.
But yeah, like like I said, like you go to a gentleman who ran Millwood and 45,000 feet of vert and 100 miles, and it's on her own. There's a handful of us that know how cool that is and what she did, and we'll stop in and say hi or something about it. You go run a Western, and it's just like. Lots of people do, and it's super cool. Like it's not in a negative way. It's like super fun and positive, and, and you feel good. And luckily, the race went well for me. So
speaking of that, just real quickly, for the race for you, I mean, you say it went well. Where were you at? Your goal? Where did you finish? And how close were to your other goals? I mean, how did you feel about all that?
Well, I hit my first goal. I didn't hit my second or third. My basic race plan was to try to take it easy, like just sort of, I knew and I'd heard enough, if you get to Forest Hill, which is at mile 62, and you're feeling pretty good, you can make up some time on the back end in the last 40 miles. So I knew that not to stress out, but I wanted to run, they have a pace chart, and I wanted to run on the 24-hour pace chart because I figured if I got to Forest Hill on the 24-hour pace chart, one, I'd hit my goal of the 24 hours, but then I could work on seeing what legs I had left and try to lower the time and see if I could get down to my 22 time. And to me, that seemed very possible. I was running with Leslie Hallett. It was super fun. She and I ran the first 28 miles together. We had run almost to... I just blanked on the name of that aid station, Robinson Flat. And we were on that last climb, and she started to pull ahead, and I could have dug in and ran with her, but she's a faster runner, so I figured I'll just let Leslie go now. And but had we crested out of the top, we probably would have hung together for a lot longer. I think of the Utah crew, I think we all came within like all went to that aid station within about like 6 minutes of each other, something like that, when you look at the splits. But at that point, I was just a couple minutes off the 24-hour pace, so not a big deal one way or the other. And then I think what really kind of put me back was the heat of the day, the mid part of the day. I took a fall on the course. I actually whacked my head on a rock pretty good, cut it up. I felt like the course was trying to spit me off at that point. I was like, all right, just dig in. Don't get hurt, And I went up this climb called Devil's Thumb. And basically you go down from a high point down to the canyon, or like you're kind of going down near the river. And then you got to climb up Devil's Thumb, which is you're going over this landmass, and then you drop down the backside of it back to the river again to climb up another big climb called Michigan Bluff. And these are, I'm not sure what someone could probably look it up, but I think it's like a couple thousand feet or something like that you're climbing. So, and it's 104 and it's midday, and it's just hot, and you're just working at it. And I got pretty knackered going up Devil's Thumb. So when I got to the top of the aid station, that's where I peel off and did find the comfortable ultra running seat, and grabbed a few things of soup and just started to make sure I had some energy. And then interestingly enough, when I started running out towards the next descent and up to Michigan Bluff, I was feeling a little tired, but I just kept moving, kept just sort of focusing on running. And at this point, where I'd been around people throughout most of the day, I'm starting to it thins out a bit around here. And then I got to Michigan Bluff, to that big climb, and that went really well. All of a sudden, I got my legs back, and I started passing people. And by the time I rolled up to Michigan Bluff, I saw my crew, really, Dom and Paul, for the first time in a while. And I asked where I was at on the pace chart, and I was a full hour plus behind the 24-hour pace chart. So now I'm like a little bummed. But at the same time, I was feeling good, and so I had said to Dom and Paul, I'm like, okay, well, look, I feel good. Well, this is time to go make up some time on this thing. And this is really where Dom started pacing. He couldn't physically run with me, but this is the first time when he says, don't do it. He's like, he kind of gave me like permission to make up 5 minutes. He goes like, look, you can make up 5 minutes here, but this isn't the place to put it in. He says, you need to wait, be patient a little bit longer, basically is what he's saying. And so I run this next section over to the Forest Hill, and I see Dom when I get up towards the paved road. There's a paved road that you finish the last mile on. And I was like 7 or 8 minutes ahead. I had made up 7 or 8 minutes. And so Dom gave me like, nice job. That was a great leg. You made up 7 minutes. So it starts to feel like we're working as a team now. Like it really starts to feel like there's a plan. We're like, going to follow this pace chart. And so, I kind of looked at Dom and Paul at that point. I'm like, so what do you guys think? And I hit this 24-hour goal. Like, can we make this up? And in my mind, I thought it was possible. But hearing them say, yeah, absolutely, you got this, was really good. But you don't make up an hour deficit
right away.
Right. It takes a little while for that to happen. So you're kind of rolling into aid stations. Like, if we made up a few minutes here or there, that was good. But you don't feel euphoric or something. You don't feel like, all right, yeah, we're really going to nail this thing for a while. And so we just got to the business of doing it. And by the time we got down to the river, where you cross the American River at Ruckachucky, we had made up 40 minutes. Wow. So now it's 20 minutes behind. Now that felt good. That felt like, all right, we're making some progress here. Let's keep going. By the time we climbed out of the canyon there and got up to this aid station called the Green Gate, I'd made up like another 7 minutes just in that section. And now all of a sudden you're like, all right, let's get after this thing. Because the pace chart assumes you're falling off, like you're getting more tired. And if you can just hold steady, you're going to make up time. And then there was a point on the course where for the first time we were going to roll into one of these aid stations, and like we were 1 minute ahead of the pace chart. So now we've made up this hour or something deficit that I put myself in. And the 24-hour goal, unless something is, because there's still plenty of running, there's still 20-something miles out there, but unless something really goes wrong, it really feels like I'm going to hit it. And we got up to Highway 49, which is a key aid station. You're going up and over another one of these sort of bluffs or land masses, and you're going to drop back down the other side to the river again. And what was kind of funny was we roll in there, we're like a good 10 minutes ahead of pace. I'm like, all right, well, we're easily going to get another 10 minutes on this chart, so we'll probably be 20 minutes ahead of the 24-hour pace. But we're also moving pretty well. Mm-hmm. And my race plan was, so once you get to the top of this climb, you descend down to the river, you cross the river, and then you've got another really big climb. Like, I'm not sure what the height is, 1,000, 2,000 feet up, right? Something like that, where it's just big. But the top of that climb is mile 99. Yeah. Oh. And then you have a 1 mile descent through like city streets.
Town, right? Yeah.
So, which is essentially like almost like a victory lap feeling by the time you hit that.
Right.
So in my mind, I was like, all right, well, look, that's just one climb. It's not going to be that bad, So really we should just throw caution to the wind on the descent and just bomb this downhill as fast as humanly possible, cross the river, and then just whatever I got left, just throw that into the climb. And so as we crest over the top of this thing, Dom and I are talking, and we're like, okay, you ready to go? Yeah. I'm like, yeah, let's tear this thing up. We're going to give it. And so we just go. And really nothing happens. Like I barely move. And I was like, yeah, we're really giving it now, aren't we? I was kind of laughing, I was like, because my legs were kind of going in and out. Like I'd get moments where I'd feel pretty strong, and then like moments where I wasn't. And I was running. I mean, I think Dom said of the last 40 miles, including aid stations and the river crossing, we averaged a 12:15 pace.
Wow, great.
So running wise, I was 10s, 11s or something like that, walking some climbs, trying to race smart, that kind of stuff. But yeah, it was funny. There really just wasn't much left at that point to run downhill as fast as I had hoped to run or would be capable on another day. But we did, there's an aid station right when you cross the river. And this is that first one, like, yeah, we don't need anything. Like, at this point we have 3, 4, 5 miles left. I'm like, whatever, like, let's just go. We got enough here.
That's when you go across a bridge, right?
Yeah, it's called No Hands Bridge. And you go across this bridge, and, I'm excited because obviously being in the sub 24 range, it's pitch black, and it's nice and cool. And in the training camp, you run that thing in the daytime, and it's pretty hot. But because of the training camp, this is a good example of like where I think that pays off. I had run this climb in 100-degree temperatures during the training camp. So here it is actually night, and it's cooler, and yeah, I got a lot more miles under me, but I knew exactly what was in front of me. And so Dom and I actually kind of laid into this thing. That's where my legs came back, and so where I didn't have it on the descent, but I had it on the climb, and I petered out like right at the top, like probably in the last like half.
People show up to watch you.
Yeah. It was exactly like that, like right because you're coming into this last. They have an aid station there, so you're kind of like at mile, I don't know, like 98 and a half, and there's an aid station. I'm like, I don't know why you would stop there. And certainly at this point when you're trying to hit a
change the shirt, right?
Sub 20, right. It
could
be. Yeah, I thought about that actually. We had
a clean shirt on.
We couldn't get to the shirt. We missed Paul actually at Highway 49. I was going to change shirts there for a nice logoed shirt for the store. But So yeah, so all of a sudden you get up there and the last little bit steep on that pavement, and then you hit the top, and you got a mile left. And this is another thing that was good about the training camp. The course is beautifully marked until this point, and then it's horribly marked in the last mile. You're on streets, and they painted like footprints on the road in red, which are almost all worn off. So there's not a piece of tape or a ribbon or anything anyplace. Oh. There's nobody out there at 3 in the morning or 4 in the morning. And so there were like Paul, who was waiting for us, was telling us stories of runners like going the wrong way, down the wrong streets. Like it's
somebody's backyard.
Yeah, it's not obvious. Here you are in the last mile, and you got to like think through. But in my case, we were totally good. And same thing, Dom's like, all right, got anything left in the tank? And I'm like, oh, yeah, let's tear it up. And, there's nothing. Yeah. And at one point, we see Paul. So now it's Paul, Dom, and myself, like, running together towards the track. And those two are starting to run away. They're starting to drop me. And I'm like thinking about, I don't say anything, but I'm like, and then you see this moment where they kind of, like, realize it. Like, their heads spin backwards, and they're like, whoa, wait. Like, we're dropping our runner.
The adrenaline's kicking in.
Yeah, and for me at this point, it wasn't that I had given up on pushing. I was just going steady. Right. And I have to say, the track is super cool. Like you get to it, you can see the lights, off in the distance, as you might imagine. A stadium, lights illuminating the night sky, and then you roll up onto the track itself. And for the first time, I take my vest off and I give it to Dom, and so now I have nothing on, and the track is soft and cushioned, and you're running around the track, and they're announcing like all your pacers and your crew and any stories you want to tell them, and then you roll up on like this most historic of 100-mile races, the first, and you come across that finish line and hit that sub 24 time, like you're feeling pretty good, you know. And then I should say Tommy Barlow, who was racing injured, and I'd seen him earlier in the day, and I'd come up on him, and he was moving pretty slow. It was one of those times when I ran up on him, and I just pulled my water bottles out, and before I even said hi, I was dousing him with water. But Tommy's like, he's such a stud, and I knew he's faster than me. And at one point in the middle of the night, he came flying past me. And I remember saying to Dom, like, oh, it's such a bummer. Like, it would have been fun to, like, run with Tommy for a little bit. But I must have been in one of my low moments, and he was in one of his high moments. And at that point, he just seemed to be going by at a unmatchable speed. We finished within, like, 6 or 10 minutes of each other, something like that. Probably, I think, 10 or 11. But so that was cool. So then when you cross the finish line, there's more of our Utah contingent out there. And, that was cool. Kenzie, Tommy's wife, was there. DJ and Kate were there. And then now my crew's there. And so we're all kind of hanging out in the infield of this track together. That was super cool. A lot of fun to do that.
Right on. Well, that's impressive. From 2002, having a goal to do this race. Yeah, 14 years, and the injuries you've gone through, and then sub 24. Sub 24 is impressive regardless of anything. Doesn't matter what race. Yeah, so that's awesome.
No, thanks.
Yeah, we followed along. We were those social media guys that were kind of keeping an eye on things.
Totally.
So it was easy to do with Western for sure.
It certainly does feel. It feels pretty good when you drive away and you left it all out there.
Right.
And that in our case, we happen to hit the sort of team goal. So I'm sure my team would have been psyched regardless of what time I finished. I would have been psyched just finishing. But, yeah, it was pretty special to be able to have had to dig out of that hole. I think that was the part of it is, like, to have been in a hole of over an hour at mile 62 and then to have put the work in that you need to get your time.
Right.
That part right there is what feels good.
Well, and so you would say, I mean, besides everything that went, the training camp probably helped a lot during that last 40, right? Kind of knowing
absolutely.
The course. I mean, your team, Dom, I mean, we had him on the show.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. He knows a thing or two about a thing or two.
He does.
Yeah.
So having him on your team with 5 minutes, 7 minutes, because like you said, a lot of people, I'm an hour behind. I got to get going. But when you got 40 miles an hour, you can make that up.
Oh, yeah, you can. I mean, to anybody listening to this, like, if you get to mile 62 in Western States, and if you're feeling good, if you've saved some energy, that last 40 miles, everybody will tell you, you can make up time. You could make up maybe even 2 hours if you needed to, depending on how you feel. But you can easily make, I think that hour that I made up is about as much as you'd probably want to push it so you're not feeling stressed. But no, you can absolutely, if you got legs, you can run, because it's starting to get cooler. Like, I think one of the things with Western is it's just hot. And so, I mean, I literally felt like I ran with a bag of ice around my neck most of the time, stuffed in this, ice bandana, and then the arm sleeves. And I ran with a vest on so I could have ice noon, hydration in my back. But I had 2 of our flasks up front with ice water. Mm-hmm. And then that was key because imagine like starting with like what seemed like 5 pounds of ice on the back of my neck. I mean, it wasn't really that, but it felt like a big bag of ice on the back of the neck, ice in your arm sleeves. Within 3 miles of leaving that aid station, it was all gone and dry,
man.
like just dry. So evaporative cooling is the key to like staying cool, like out of Western. In general, that would be it. But evaporative cooling is what you're working on. So that was interesting too. Is like my shirt, my shorts, all that stuff. I was soaked like the entire race because you get all this ice melting all over you the entire time. I mean, I'm just spraying myself with ice water, and that was a huge part of keeping it all under control for me and not pushing it too hard and things like that.
And now we'll touch quickly
Yeah.
because we came in the shop and you showed us your sweet your skin condition, right?
Yeah.
Neapolitan tan line that I've got going. Yeah.
Because you just did an adventure race.
Yeah, so I guess just about 2-3 weeks after Western, I jumped into an expedition length race. So we raced 470 miles nonstop as a team of 4. And roughly in it had 120 miles of paddling, it had 270 miles of mountain biking, and then there was some climbing in there, but the balance of that is all made up on foot, running, trekking, something like that. So I am proud and happy to say that running legs do translate well, like, because I didn't have the bike legs and the paddling time that I wanted for this. But I think the running legs held up quite well, actually, on there, because 270 miles on the mountain bike, that's a little bit of chafing going on there.
I wouldn't worry about my legs so much.
It's about that saddle.
Yeah, right.
That's exactly what I was afraid of.
The undercarriage.
Yeah.
No, like even with the chamois butter, like it's a little chapped. So there's just no way around it. We were in Wyoming. We raced out of Casper, Wyoming. This was the Adventure Racing World Series tour. And so I was asked to race on we'll call it like a semi-pro team, like an established team called Team NorCal. But we had some newer racers on there, and it's the first time we'd all raced together. So I was just coming in, just hoping to hold up, my own end of this thing here and do well. But I always find adventure racing interesting too, in that like you can be remote, fairly close to civilization, like close to towns, but you really are exposed and out there on your own. I mean, there was a boat there was one night, we were paddling down the Platte River 120 miles. So that basically means we're starting paddling in the morning and we're going to finish before noon the next day. But you're kind of like paddling nonstop. So imagine your shoulders and abs and obliques and all that kind of stuff. And then you'd get out of the boat every 15 or 20 miles to go do, say, an orienteering course, whether it was on bike or foot or in an urban setting or something. So you're running around and you're racing, though, because, you're really like trying to be this is time. Like this is not like a casual thing. Like you're just fully going after it. I mean, the race started with a cool 30-mile bike ride out of Casper down to the river. We followed an ATV that was cruising at like 12 miles per hour for the first 7 miles to get us through town. The police had rolling blocks up there. The race is sold out. So now you've got teams from all over the world. You got teams from South America, from Asia, from Europe, and that's a huge peloton of mountain bikers. And, mountain bikers aren't usually racing the Tour de France style in pelotons. But it turned out we averaged, I think it was like 23.5 miles per hour out to the river, which on a mountain bike, that's moving. So that's a fast-moving peloton. And you're linked up. So, I've got one of my teammates connected to me behind me on a tow line. And then Rolly was towing Stephanie behind him. So the three of us are all tied together, essentially. And then Tim, our fourth teammate and captain, was in front, sort of breaking the wind for us. And so you're just trying to move in a pace line and get out to the river. But what I was going to say is in the river, that first night, all of a sudden those Wyoming winds kicked up. Then there's 3 foot, what seems like seas, but waves that are breaking the bow. So we're in 16-foot heavy plastic canoes trying to punch right through the headwind in this open lake with 3-foot waves just crashing in. At some point, we had to call it. Like we couldn't make any more forward progress, and we didn't want to run a downwind leg because we don't want to go backwards, but we ran a crosswind leg. And it's middle of the night, so I can't see the shoreline. You just know there's
one there.
Yeah, there's one there. And you're like, all right, I'm just heading that direction. And it didn't matter too much. You just wanted to get there. Because at this point, everybody's getting pretty cold and, tired and stuff. And we get over, we get out. I think Rolly was pretty cold that time, and he was behind a tree trying to get warm. Tim and I were hauling boats out of the water. Stephanie's grabbing all the gear. By chance, I saw like a rope hanging from a tree that kind of looked like a rope swing. And then I thought to myself, hold on, guys, let me just run over this hill. And I got over the hill and I saw a picnic table. I was like, whoa, this is good news. Like, I was just trying to find a way to get out of the wind. and then we saw an outhouse. So the four of us are holed up in an outhouse for a little bit, which is like, like the Four Seasons of outhouses for us.
Yeah.
Like this is, brilliant. But meanwhile, what's going on around you and you don't know it is like one team completely had their boat sunk from underneath them filled with water and the waves.
Oh.
And these guys had, you have an emergency beacon and they were able to hit it. But I think I've heard stories from 1 to 3 hours, but someplace they're floating in the water in these conditions.
Gosh.
Like two guys, like just not knowing what's going to happen, and Fish and Wildlife was able to rescue them via boat. They had and in the end, those guys, I heard the story later, had to commandeer some drunk fishermen's, boat that were just partying on the shore basically, and grabbed their boat and went out and got them. But another boat in the river that morning, and I didn't see this during the race, but there's some rapids you're running, and I used to do a bunch of whitewater boating, so my read of the river is still reasonably okay. And so, you see the tongue, and I'm like, hey, we're going to head over here, and we kind of go that way. But what's to the left of what I was looking at is calm-looking water. But that calm-looking water is actually flowing over something. That's kind of like the waterfall, if you will. And a team, I guess, wasn't used to running rivers and kind of went that way. And the object that was causing this waterfall was some submerged piece of metal or something.
Oh, no.
And one of their boats got punctured. And then the boat kind of spun around it and then folded in half and completely tacoed while they were in the boat. So they had to bail out like in this little rapid. And so there's stuff like that in adventure racing going on that you just don't quite realize sometimes. Like it's ever present. You're near civilization, yet you really are remote and kind of exposed. Like those guys have to self-rescue themselves. The guys in the lake are responsible ultimately for their life. Like fellow racers take care of each other. Right. A local friend of ours, woman Celia, who's a brilliant racer, had a fall on her mountain bike and cracked her hip, like in the race. So there's things like this going on that you don't know, and there's like credible stories of like teamwork. Like the guys who folded the boat in half actually got into their other teammates' boat. So it's a 16-foot canoe with 4 of them. They managed to continue paddling down the river till they could get to the race directors, who got them another boat, and then they could continue on. So they were not disqualified because they stayed on course, which in this case was the river. But yeah, so, that part of Wyoming, I mistakenly thought like, oh, this must be kind of flat out there. Like, I don't know what's around Casper, but this must be kind of flattish. And couldn't have been further from it, It's just mountainous and tons of climbing and, all kinds of stuff like that. So those 3.5 day races, when you're racing it long, it's a lot of sleep deprivation and working through that because you're trying to go fast, nonstop. But at some point you're going to have to sleep, but you can't like bed down.
Right.
So
just catch a little bit here and there
when you can
in the commode, right?
Yeah, there you go.
Well, that actually was like, we got to sleep that time. So we pull in there, like we know the storm's not going to subside for a while. So we're like, all right, well, let's set the alarm for an hour and a half. And then we'll start checking every half hour to see if conditions subside. But so to get an hour and a half sleep on the first night, we felt like in the morning, like we're like, oh, that was awesome. We totally just got away with this. Yeah. Except for we were also bummed because some of the teams that were ahead of us by just an hour on the course or even half an hour that missed that storm or got through the last bit were still racing.
Oh, yeah.
So we were really bummed actually. So from a race perspective, we went from like right up there in the thick of it. In contention for placing to just being thrown to the back. Right. And we don't know how far back though, because where the other teams are. So that was an interesting moment. Like I had to I put on one face for the team, which was like, hey, we got this. Let's go race what's left. Blah blah. But at the same time, I'm kind of digging deep, going like, all right, come on, we got to like. This is that moment when you kind of figure out what you're made of. Right. And so in the end of the race, we battled back to 11th place.
Nice.
That's good. With the global field and. Yeah, it was awesome. So, in the team, I would say the other thing that's cool is when you're dealing with sleep deprivation and you've got 4 people like on a team, things can go wrong. Like there are teams that will break apart in a race and not talk to each other. There's
I've seen some of that on TV.
Yeah, it's all that kind of stuff can happen. I mean, this is human stuff, right? And like our team just got dirtier and more crass and like laughing and like cracking jokes the further we went in. So. For us to finish the race and recovered well and we all had an incredible time and like we're still laughing at the end, that was great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you've gone from the race you've done this year, Western States, to your adventure race. What's on the horizon now? What do you got your eyes on? Is there anything you got going this year left, or is there something next year big planned? What do you got?
Well, the big one is coming up in January. So I got into the Spine race.
Right.
Yeah. So the Spine race is 268 miles of nonstop running or racing on the Pennine Way Trail in the UK. So it basically goes from York, kind of in the middle of England, up to the Scottish border. And
Yeah.
it's a bit like us running the PCT trail or an AT trail kind of thing.
Right.
For in the UK, this would be a place in the summer they might go through hike or something like that.
Right.
But this race starts January 22nd, so it's going to be in the dead of winter. And so therein lies the challenge. It's like winter running here where it's dry would be one thing, but we're talking that damp, wet,
Non-stop
cold
damn
wade. Yeah, this is like that bone-chilling kind of cold.
Right.
And what's funny is because it's on this Pennine Way Trail, the aid stations are like at pubs and hotels and stuff.
Oh my gosh, I would never leave.
That's I think that is going to be like the biggest challenge. I think it's
Right?
one thing you're on the course and like the wind's blowing sideways and you're just like dealing with the elements and you dig deep, but then you're going to roll into like a hot pub, get a pint, get some shepherd pie, and all of a sudden you got to leave.
You just got to carry your American Express on this trip, and then you'll be set.
Yep.
Well, yeah, and it turns out Dom Layfield, Dom is running it as well,
Right.
and so he's going to run the slightly shorter distance of 110 miles or something like
Right.
that. Of course, the difference is Dom's going to go for like a course record, and I'm
Oh,
going to go
yeah.
for a finish. But what'll happen though is Dom will finish his race, and then he'll crew me for the balance of mine, which
Right.
would be great. 'Cause,
He can kick you out of the pub.
yeah, he could, but I actually, I kind of see getting out of the pub okay, because it's like all the people around, so you're gonna like put on a good show and
Right.
like be stoic. Oh, okay, ready to head out. I think it's the moment the door closes behind you and you've got to cross the parking lot and
Try
you're
not to
by
cry a little
yourself.
bit.
Yeah, exactly. Once you get on that trail and you get moving, and it's closer to get to where you're going.
Yeah.
That's probably a good mental state, but I
Yeah.
think it's going to be leaving like the parking lot of the town. I think when nobody can see you and like nobody
That'd be
knows what.
So much fun to crew though.
Oh, it would, wouldn't it?
Oh,
I mean, because it'd be like it's not like you're in the middle of no place, like
Right.
under an easy up. You're,
Yep.
you're actually you could be just. I show up and you guys are all like liquored up, you
Yeah.
know.
Right.
Like, just-
You'd need at least one super dependable person in your crew.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
a designated crew driver or
Yep.
whatever. 'Cause everybody
Totally.
else would be like, yeah, we'll stay for a little bit longer.
that's right.
yeah, it would be one of those kind of things. But how fun will that be? Another destination thing, So Dom and I'll get over there. He has family in the UK. I have family. My wife's family's in the UK,
Okay.
and so we both actually have pretty decent support systems there. I'm not sure how many other Americans will do it. There's not usually a lot, but we'll make a good showing of it, and we're training for it now. So Dom and I were just talking the other day. So like
Getting out in all the snow this
Yeah,
winter,
yeah.
this summer.
yeah, well, it's kind of back to that original plan of running 6 days a week,
Right.
But trying to get up to an hour to 2 hours a day, 6 days a week, and just having really good legs.
Mhm.
And I do think that's a key thing. I don't know if when you spoke with Dom, if he talked about his heart rate training, but I've kind of bought into this
Yep.
where, you'll pick a distance of a race and you'll run to those heart rate, training run. But the key is in this theory is you have the same heart rate going up and downhill.
Right.
And if you look at my logs and if you see my heart rate, you'll see I can hold pretty steady on the climbs. I'm fairly comfortable there, but my heart rate will drop on the descents.
Mhm.
And now when Dom and I run together, let's say we go for a training run, we'll set a heart rate of 150 beats a minute that we want to run. Dom and I will move really evenly uphill and flats. If anything, I can catch up a bit on the uphills. But when you think about running downhill at 150 beats a minute, I mean, that is flying.
Yeah,
and
it is.
Dom can do that. Dom can do that over 100 miles. I can't.
Right.
So I end up backing off and sometimes hitting, like 100 and, say 40,
Mhm.
beats a minute going downhill. And so, I'm really working to try to level mine out. And then that's one of my goals before heading out to the Pennine Way Trails, to try to find that balance in my training as well.
Nice.
So what's your time goal?
For running that thing?
Yeah.
It's hard to say because, as much as I can gather, so, I'll try to go for the win, and I'll try to see
Okay.
if I can get towards a course record on it, which is all pretty fine to say right now, but, who knows what will happen, because, when you see the videos of these guys out there, if you get a particularly bad section of weather, they're all kind of at a walk.
Right.
They're all just sort of hiking. And then when you... when the weather lets up a little bit, you'll see them running again.
Right.
So I think that's going to dictate the time more than
Okay.
anything. I don't think there's too much we get to do to really control it, other than be totally prepared and just push hard. In a weird way, you kind of want to say, well, what if you just ran 100 miles, slept an hour, ran 100 miles, slept an hour, ran 68 miles, and then you're finished?
No.
Well, it sounds great, right? But I just don't think there's any way
No
that's
way.
possible. So, so I think as we get a little bit closer, I'll start planning it out a bit more and dig
Right.
in. But I'd like to, if I could get in the, the top group of people that finish would be great. Whatever that means.
Yeah.
Do you know what kind of that time frame is? Like
Oh
what
yeah,
like
yeah.
From
So
where to where?
you're kind of in this like 4 or 5 day kind of range of
So here we've
nonstop
gone
running.
from a 24-hour time going like a 4.5 day.
Yeah, right.
That's pretty serious.
Well, it'd be interesting because like if you can run, you kind of have a sense of what your 100-mile times are and stuff.
Right.
But yeah, 200. It's the weather really, but you get the 268 miles to deal with. 200s are kind of as Stephen Jones would say, the new 100, right?
Yeah.
You know. So it was funny back when he and I were talking about this. It was the one thing where I was like, "Well, I'm doing 268," and he was accepting of that. That did hit that
Hit the
mark.
200 mark.
But he's actually the one who talked Dom into running the 100 miles. He was like,
okay.
What Steven was always about was trying to see someone kind of hit your personal best. Like,
Right.
it didn't matter if you're in a lead or if you're back of the pack. He just wanted everybody around him to have the best experience possible. And so his reasoning, and he was applying it to me, I just don't see myself doing a bunch of these. But like to Dom, who wants to go back and do the 268 one, but he wants to nail the course record there. The strategy that really he and Steven kind of put into place is run the 100-mile version, get a feel for it, get the experience, and then go back and do the 268.
Right.
I kind of look at it like, well, I'm probably doing this once. And,
Yeah.
I'm just going to go hit this thing and call it
See
good.
what
Well, you better
happens.
finish it and don't get stuck in that pub.
Yeah. Well, if I do get stuck in the pub, it better be a good story, I
Yeah.
guess.
He'll be keep all these Instagram updates, and he's still in the
He's
pub.
still there.
20
Still
minutes
in the
later,
pub.
here's
Yeah,
another
exactly.
picture.
I'll be like, no, it's just my tracking device. So that's the big thing. I think I'm going to do some more adventure racing between now and then for fun. I'm going to head out in September and do a 30-hour one, which is will be fast. And if you think about it now, we're kind of back into the scale of our 100-mile races. So that'd just be kind of good fun. I did sign up for the Red Bull 400, totally goofy thing,
that
but
looks like fun.
400 meters up the ski jumps.
Yeah.
I
At
don't know
the
about
Olympics.
looks like
That's
fun. Looks like fun to watch.
Same day as the Bear, right?
Yeah, that's the thing that's a bummer about it here. It's also the same day as the North Face races.
Yeah.
So you got the Bear, the North Face, and this Red Bull 400 all on the same day. And I'd been running the aid station out at the North Face race last couple years. And at the same time, I have friends that are running the Bear, and I want to go pace and crew.
Right.
But I decided to be a little selfish, and I signed up for this Red Bull 400. And, you're going to make 1, maybe 2 laps up this thing, 400 meters up a ski jump, just blow your lungs apart.
Right.
And your day's done. So it might be the easiest of all things, but it just seems fun, just fun. And that's what I'm kind of looking forward to.
Nice.
Yeah.
It looks fun to watch on my book anyway.
Yeah. I want to try it once, but I think it's a schedule problem.
Yeah. Well, it does.
That's my excuse.
I think it is one of those really things where I think anybody can do it.
Yeah.
And it's just about how much you destroy yourself when you go
Right.
up the thing kind of deal.
Yeah.
But we'll have to see. We have a person that runs on the store race team, Liz Steven. And Liz, I mean, one, to be clear, she's a phenomenal athlete. I think she's been to 1 or 2 Olympics, in Nordic skiing. So,
Wow.
she's kind of, obviously the ability, if you will, to put herself into the red zone on cardio and hold there for a
Right.
while. She could probably tell us to the exact second, like how long she can hold it. But she set the world record on the Red Bull 400 last year on that course. So she doesn't know this yet, but I'm going to make her my coach.
There you go.
So, yeah.
You might
She'll know it
regret
soon
that.
enough.
I'm going to see if I can just tow. Like, maybe she can just pull me.
There you go.
like
Just
that.
tuck in behind her,
Gonna
right?
Tuck in behind Liz and just have her pull me. That'd
Yeah.
be great.
Well, we really appreciate you, number one, letting us hang out here.
Yep.
We try and dress nice so we don't scare off the customers.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm serious about that home away from home. Like,
It really
always,
is.
We had some people come in they were out running today, and they just stopped in the store to grab water, and, Jenilyn and I were there chatting with them and saying hi, but, like, that kind of stuff makes us all, like, warm and fuzzy, because,
Yeah.
we
Right.
just want this to be, like, a comfortable place for people to hang out.
It is.
Yeah. Well, we love it, and
Yep.
we, it's been
If
2
we-
weeks since we came up last.
If we lived up here, we'd be here all the time.
Yeah, you'd probably
right.
get
Seriously.
sick of seeing that for
Yeah.
sure.
Best coffee house in town. Well, we'd like to think so, but we make a good drink, and so we'd make some stuff for you to hang out and
And then,
enjoy
do you guys
yourself.
have wine on Thursday nights now?
Well,
I've been telling people that, so
I guess that
I hope
depends.
it's true.
Well, if the DABC is listening, absolutely not.
No, definitely
we
not.
would never do such a thing.
You have grape juice on Thursday nights.
Yeah, fermented grape juice.
Yes.
No, you know what happened? How that got kicked off though was we had a private function and we had a bottle of wine left over, and someone's like,
Oh.
"Hey, we should have that."
It's
Of
Thursday
course.
night.
It's Thursday night. Let's do
Yeah,
it.
so that just kind of were like, yeah, all right, whatever. And but yeah, all of a sudden, like everybody responded to her, like, I guess we're doing wine nights Thursday night. So, if you're over 21, you want to bring your own wine up, or I'm not sure what I'm supposed to say, like to keep it clean here in Utah, but
Yeah.
come on up. There's probably a social event going on Thursday nights around here.
All right.
There you go. Social event.
I like it.
Thursday night, over 21 social events.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we thanks again for getting on the show with us. Congratulations on an awesome year so
Yeah.
far. Some
Oh,
cool
thanks.
stuff, and we
Looking
look
forward
forward
to
to
next
hearing
year.
the stories
Oh,
of
yeah.
the spine race for sure.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting one. I'm definitely going to have a camera out there with me on that one.
Yeah,
Right.
A little GoPro Sufferfest, or
that'll
something.
be awesome. Yeah, thanks for coming on. Thanks for opening up to us. We will talk to you soon, and we'll probably be back sooner than later.
Probably.
All right, sounds good.
All right, thanks. Thank you for listening to the Trail Manners podcast. We'd like to thank Canice Harte for taking the time to join us today. We'd also like to thank Park City Run Company for their hospitality. If you haven't been up here, please make sure you get in the door. We'd also like to encourage everybody to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Trail Manners, or swing by the website at trailmanners.com. Stop by the store page for some gear, or hit us up on the contact page and let us know what you want to see, who you want to hear, or if you would like to be on our show. Until next time, this is Eric Manning with Joel Hatch reminding you, you don't get what you wish for, you get what you work for. Now go get it.